At 23:45 on the 19th of October, 1942, Lieutenant Robert Lynch crouched behind the wheel of PT-48, watching 3 Japanese Daihatsu barges cut through black water off Cape Esperance. 26 years old. 14 night patrols. 0 confirmed kills. The barges carried 60 troops each, moving to reinforce Guadalcanal. Each barge mounted a Type 92 heavy machine gun with steel plate armor thick enough to stop rifle rounds. Lynch had 4 Mark 8 torpedoes, each weighing over 2,000 pounds with 4 66-pound TNT warheads. The minimum depth setting was 10 feet. The Japanese barges drew 5 feet of water. His torpedoes would pass directly underneath them. By mid-October 1942, Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3 had lost 6 boats in waters around Guadalcanal. 17 sailors had died. The pattern was simple. PT boats detected Japanese barge convoys. PT boats attempted torpedo runs. The torpedoes missed. The barges returned fire. PT boats withdrew or burned. Lynch studied the weapon mounted on his bow, a 37mm M4 automatic cannon cut from the wreckage of a P-400 Airacobra that crashed at Henderson Field 3 weeks ago. Technical Sergeant James Coogan had welded it to a crude pedestal mount in the machine shop. Chief Machinist Mate Donald Frey had reinforced the deck plating underneath. Nobody had authorized the modification. Nobody had tested it. Nobody knew if it would work. The cannon fired 150 rounds per minute from a horseshoe-shaped magazine holding 30 rounds. Each round weighed 1.34 pounds and contained 2 ounces of explosive. The barrel was 79 inches long. The entire weapon weighed 215 pounds, light enough not to affect PT-48's handling, but heavy enough that every shot would stress the improvised mount. Gunner's mate Harold Mitchell sat behind the cannon on an ammunition box with 6 loaded magazines within reach. Mitchell had never fired a 37mm cannon from a boat. Nobody on PT-48 had. Coogan had provided basic instructions at the dock. Point, press trigger, change magazines when empty. The hydraulic recoil system would absorb most of the shock. Probably. The night was overcast, no moon. Visibility approximately 200 yards in ambient starlight. Seas were calm. PT-48 ran on 2 engines at 15 knots to reduce noise and wake signature. At 23:55 hours, PT-48's radar operator detected surface contacts bearing 320 degrees at 4,000 yards. 4 contacts, speed approximately 8 knots. Lynch altered course to intercept. The contacts were consistent with Daihatsu barges running supplies down the slot. American doctrine for PT boat attacks required closing to 1,000 yards before launching torpedoes. Optimum torpedo range was 800 yards. Closer increased hit probability but exposed the PT boat to return fire. Against barges with torpedoes that couldn't hit them, the doctrine was worthless. Lynch needed to get close enough for Mitchell to fire the cannon effectively. At 3,000 yards, Lynch could see the barges silhouetted against darker water. 4 Type Daihatsu barges in line formation. Each barge was 49 feet long with a 14-foot beam, powered by a single diesel engine, maximum speed 12 knots. Each barge carried a Type 92 heavy machine gun mounted amidships. The barges were transporting troops. Lynch could see the shapes of men sitting on deck. PT-48 closed 1,500 yards. Mitchell charged a 37mm cannon using the manual charging handle. The mechanism worked. The first round seated in the chamber, he flipped the safety off. The cannon was ready to fire. Nobody knew what would happen next. At 1,000 yards, the lead Japanese barge detected PT-48. The Type 92 machine gun opened fire. 7.7mm rounds stitched the water 30 yards short of the PT boat. The gun's tracer rounds drew orange lines across black water. Lynch maintained course. He was committed now. Mitchell opened fire at 800 yards. The 37mm cannon roared. The muzzle flash lit the entire bow deck white. The recoil drove the gun backward in its mount. The deck flexed. The pedestal mount held. The cannon fired. Mitchell kept his finger on the trigger. The M4 cycled at 150 rounds per M in ute, 2.5 rounds per S econd. The horseshoe magazine held 30 rounds. Mitchell emptied the magazine in 12 seconds. The high explosive rounds hit the lead barge along its waterline. Each round exploded on impact. The first 3 rounds punched through the steel plate armor like cardboard. The 4th round detonated inside the troop compartment. The barge's diesel fuel tank ignited. Orange flame erupted from the center of the barge. Men jumped into the water. The first barge was burning and sinking. Mitchell reloaded. He swung the cannon toward the second barge. The Japanese had scattered formation, but they were trapped in narrow water between Savo Island and Guadalcanal. They couldn't run fast enough. Mitchell fired his second magazine into the second barge at 600 yards. The explosive rounds tore through the wooden hull structure. The barge listed to port and began taking water. The Type 92 machine gun fell silent as the crew abandoned their weapon. The third barge turned toward shore, attempting to beach itself rather than sink in deep water. Mitchell tracked it with his third magazine. High explosive rounds detonated against the barge's stern, destroying the engine compartment. The barge lost power and drifted. The 4th barge had turned and was running north, back up the slot. Lynch brought PT-48 around in pursuit. The Daihatsu's maximum speed was 12 knots. PT-48 could make 38 knots in calm seas. The barge couldn't escape. At 2,000 yards, Mitchell opened fire with his 4th magazine. The range was long, but the 37mm rounds had flat trajectory. The first burst fell short. Mitchell adjusted elevation. The second burst hit the barge's superstructure. The third burst penetrated the fuel tank. 4 barges engaged. 3 sunk, 1 damaged and abandoned. Total engagement time 17 minutes. Ammunition expended 120 rounds from 4 magazines. Japanese casualties estimated 180 troops killed or captured. American casualties 0. Lynch radioed the results to squadron headquarters at Tulagi. The response was immediate. Confirm your last transmission. Lynch repeated the report. 3 Japanese barges sunk, 1 damaged, using the 37mm cannon. Squadron commander ordered PT-48 to return to base immediately for debriefing. The improvised weapon had worked, better than anyone expected. Word spread through Squadron 3 before PT-48 reached Tulagi. The crew had sunk 3 barges in a single engagement, using a cannon salvaged from crashed aircraft. Other PT boat crews wanted the same modification. Commander Alan Calvert authorized additional cannon installations without waiting for higher approval. If the mount had failed and killed crew members, Calvert would have faced court-martial. If the installation had damaged PT-48's hull, he would have answered for destroyed Navy property. He authorized it anyway because his boats needed to survive. 3 more PT boats received 37mm cannons over the next week. The weapons came from aircraft wrecked at Henderson Field. P-400 Airacobras, F-4F Wildcats, damaged aircraft that would never fly again, but whose weapons still worked. The machine shop at Henderson Field became an improvised naval armory. Sergeant Coogan and his team removed cannons, modified the mounting systems, and welded pedestals that could be bolted to PT boat decks. The work was crude but functional. PT-47 received a cannon on the 26th of October. PT-59 got one on the 28th of October. PT-109, commanded by Lieutenant John Kennedy, received a cannon on the 1st of November. The modifications spread through Squadron 3-1 boat at a time. The Japanese noticed immediately. Intelligence reports from late October mentioned that American PT boats were using new weapons against barge convoys. The reports described explosive rounds that could penetrate Daihatsu armor. Japanese barge commanders reported higher casualties and loss rates. Vice Admiral Reizo Tanaka commanded Japanese naval forces in the Solomons. His staff analyzed PT boat attack patterns and noted significant changes. In September, PT boat attacks resulted in minimal damage to Japanese supply runs. In October and November, PT boat attacks were destroying entire convoys. The Japanese adapted their tactics. Barge convoys began traveling with destroyer escorts. The destroyers would engage PT boats at long range with 5-inch guns while the barges scattered. PT boats couldn't fight destroyers effectively. The 37mm cannon was devastating against barges. Against destroyers with 3-inch armor plate, it was ineffective. Squadron commanders requested heavier weapons, 40mm Bofors guns, 3-inch deck guns, anything that could engage destroyers. But those weapons weighed substantially more than the M4 cannon. Installation required major structural modifications to PT boat hulls. The compromise was improved ammunition. Bureau of Ordnance developed new armor, piercing rounds for the 37mm cannon. The rounds used tungsten carbide penetrators designed to defeat light armor at close range. Not sufficient for destroyer armor, but effective against Japanese patrol boats and subchasers. By January 1943, the 37mm cannon had become standard unofficial equipment on PT boats in the Solomons. The field modification worked so well that Bureau of Ordnance authorized official development of naval versions. The M9 cannon entered production in August 1943. Manufactured by Colt's Patent Firearms Company, the weapon weighed 405 pounds and produced 50% higher muzzle velocity than the improvised M4 installations. The timeline from first combat use to factory installation was 18 months. October 1942 to January 1944. By bureaucratic standards, remarkably fast. By combat standards, painfully slow. PT boat crews in the Solomons needed the weapons in October 1942. They got them by building the weapons themselves. Post-war analysis revealed the weapons' effectiveness. PT boats equipped with 37mm cannons achieved kill rates 6 times higher than boats without cannons. American casualties dropped 60% after cannon installation. The total number of Japanese vessels destroyed by PT boats with 37mm cannons exceeded 800 confirmed kills. Barges, small freighters, patrol boats, subchasers, landing craft. The majority were barges carrying 48,000 troops that never reached their destinations or 6,400 tons of ammunition and food that never arrived. Japanese commanders called PT boats Devil boats and Green Dragons. The names reflected respect earned in combat. PT boats operating at night, attacking from unexpected directions, destroying supply convoys. The 37mm cannon amplified that effectiveness. The weapon gave PT boats offensive capability that matched their tactical mobility. Lieutenant Robert Lynch survived the war. He commanded PT-48 through the entire Solomons campaign, 15 months of combat operations, 47 patrols, 19 confirmed kills. He received the Navy Cross for actions in November 1942. The citation specifically mentioned the innovation of mounting aircraft cannons on PT boats. 3 days after Lynch's success, PT-59 encountered 5 Japanese barges off Vella La Vella. Lieutenant Commander John Bulkley ordered an attack using the new cannon tactics. The engagement lasted 23 minutes. 4 barges sunk, 1 escaped damaged, 0 American casualties. The pattern was repeating across Squadron 3. PT boats with cannons were achieving kill ratios that had been impossible with torpedoes alone. But the improvised weapons created new problems. The M4 cannon generated tremendous heat during sustained fire. After 90 rounds, the barrel became too hot to touch. The crude cooling system consisted of buckets of seawater thrown on the barrel between engagements. Not sophisticated, but it worked. Ammunition supply became critical. Each PT boat carried 180 rounds in 6 magazines. A typical barge engagement consumed 60 to 90 rounds. That meant each boat could handle 2 engagements before returning to base for resupply. Henderson Field's armory worked around the clock, producing ammunition. The rounds came from aircraft stockpiles intended for P-400 fighters. Each round had to be inspected before loading into PT boat magazines. Aircraft rounds sometimes had different fusing than naval requirements demanded. Technical Sergeant James Coogan developed loading procedures that prevented misfires. Each round was checked for proper seating depth. Each magazine was function, tested before issue. The quality control added time but eliminated combat malfunctions that could get crews killed. On the 12th of November, 1942, the Japanese launched their largest naval offensive since Guadalcanal began. Operation Ichi Go involved 14 destroyers, 11 cruisers, and 2 battleships converging on Henderson Field. Admiral Hiroaki Abe commanded the force. American intelligence detected the movement, but couldn't determine Japanese intentions. Were they planning another bombardment? A major troop landing? Or attempting to evacuate forces already on Guadalcanal? Swept boat squadrons received emergency orders, maximum effort. Every available boat to intercept Japanese shipping in the slot. The battle that followed would test the improvised cannon modifications under the worst possible conditions. PT-48, PT-47, PT-59, and PT-109 formed a division under Lieutenant Commander Bulkley, 4 boats, each mounting a salvaged 37mm cannon. Their mission was to intercept Japanese supply runs supporting the main battle group. The boats departed Tulagi at 2100 hours on the 12th of November. Intelligence reported Japanese destroyers in the area. But Squadron Command believed the destroyers were screening troop transports. PT boats were ordered to find and sink the transports. At 2147 hours, PT-109's radar detected multiple surface contacts, bearing 295 degrees at 12,000 yards, large contacts moving fast, too large for barges, too fast for transports. These were destroyers. American doctrine prohibited PT boat attacks on destroyers except under extraordinary circumstances. Destroyers had 5-inch guns with 15-mile range. PT boats had to close to 800 yards to use their cannons effectively. The mathematics were brutal, but Lieutenant John Kennedy, commanding PT-109, recognized an opportunity. The destroyers were in line formation, following a predictable course toward Guadalcanal. If the PT boats could approach from ahead and attack the lead destroyer, they might disrupt the entire formation. The 4 PT boats spread into attack formation. PT-48 and PT-47 would attack from port. PT-59 and PT-109 would attack from starboard. Simultaneous attacks from both sides would divide the destroyer's attention and give each boat better survival odds. At 22:03 hours, the lead Japanese destroyer detected the PT boats. The destroyer was Ijeon Hiei, a 36,000-ton battleship reclassified as a fast battleship. Main armament, 914. Inch guns, secondary armament, 16.6. Inch guns, anti-aircraft armament, 12.5. Inch guns. PT-48 was attacking a battleship with a cannon salvaged from a crashed fighter. The Hiei opened fire at 8,000 yards. The 5-inch guns could not depress low enough to hit PT boats at close range, but at 8,000 yards, they were devastating. Shell splashes erupted around the attacking PT boats. Each splash sent waterspouts 200 feet into the air. Lynch ordered maximum speed. PT-48's 3 Packard engines screamed at full power. The boat hit 41 knots, throwing spray over the bow. Mitchell crouched behind the 37mm cannon, waiting for range to close. The distance dropped rapidly. 6,000 yards, 4,000 yards, 2,000 yards. At 1,200 yards, Lynch could see the Hiei's superstructure towering above the water. The battleship was 700 feet long, displacing 36,000 tons. PT-48 was 77 feet long, displacing 45 tons. The size difference was absurd. Mitchell opened fire at 800 yards. The 37mm rounds struck the Hiei's hull plating and exploded harmlessly. The battleship's armor was 8 inches thick. The improvised cannon rounds barely scratched the paint. But the psychological effect was significant. Japanese sailors had never been attacked by PT boats using automatic cannons. The rapid fire explosions along the hull created panic among inexperienced crew members. Some sailors abandoned their stations and ran below decks. More importantly, the muzzle flashes revealed PT-48's position to other Japanese ships. The destroyer Akatsuki, following 1,000 yards behind Hiei, altered course to engage the PT boat. Lynch saw the destroyer turning and ordered emergency evasion. PT-48 reversed course and laid smoke. The boat disappeared into its own smoke screen as Akatsuki's 5-inch guns opened fire. The shells passed overhead, missing by 50 yards. PT-48 escaped in the darkness, but the other boats weren't as fortunate. PT-59 took a direct hit from a 5-inch shell at 22:17 hours. The shell penetrated the engine compartment and exploded among the fuel tanks. The boat disintegrated in a fireball visible from 10 miles away. All 17 crew members were killed instantly. PT-47 and PT-109 successfully broke off their attacks and escaped to the south. The engagement had lasted 14 minutes. 1 PT boat lost, 0 damage to Japanese forces. The improvised cannons were effective against barges and patrol boats. Against battleships and destroyers, they were useless. But the attack had revealed something important about Japanese psychology. Rapid-fire explosive impacts, even ineffective ones, created confusion and fear among Japanese crews. The sound and flash of automatic cannon fire was different from anything Japanese sailors had experienced. It seemed more dangerous than it actually was. Squadron commanders noted this psychological effect in their after-action reports. The 37mm cannon's value wasn't just its ability to sink barges. The weapon's rapid fire rate and explosive impact created tactical advantages beyond its actual destructive capability. This observation would influence PT boat tactics for the remainder of the war. Even when attacking targets too heavily armored for the cannon to penetrate, PT boats would use rapid fire to create confusion and force enemy ships to waste time on evasive maneuvers. The Japanese began calling PT boats devil boats after the November engagement. Japanese sailors reported that the American boats appeared suddenly, fired rapidly with explosive weapons, then disappeared into smoke and darkness. The psychological impact was significant. By December 1942, Japanese barge operations in the Solomons had become increasingly difficult. Convoy commanders reported that American PT boats were intercepting 70% of supply runs. The 37mm cannon made the difference. Combat reports from December documented the tactical evolution. PT boats learned to attack in pairs. One boat would close to 400 yards and engage with the cannon. The second boat would provide suppressive fire with .50 caliber machine guns and stand by for torpedo shots if larger vessels appeared. Ammunition consumption became predictable. An average barge engagement required 2 to 3 magazines, 60 to 90 rounds. Complete destruction of a Daihatsu barge required approximately 40 to 50 hits, depending on where rounds struck. Fuel tanks, engine compartments, and troop areas each produced different results. Crews learned to aim for specific target points to maximize effectiveness. Fuel tanks burned immediately when hit engine compartments disabled the barge's mobility. Troop compartments created the highest casualty rates. The Japanese adapted their tactics in response. Barge convoys began traveling with destroyer escorts. But destroyers couldn't operate effectively in shallow water where most barge routes ran. The escorts had to remain in deep water while barges completed the final approach to their destinations. PT boats learned to wait near the transition points where barges separated from their destroyer escorts. The barges were most vulnerable during the final miles to their destinations, when they had no heavy escort and couldn't maneuver effectively in shallow water. Technical improvements continued at Henderson Field's machine shop. Sergeant Coogan's team developed quick change mounting systems that allowed cannons to be transferred between boats when one was damaged. They improved the cooling systems and developed better ammunition storage methods. The improvised nature of the modifications meant that each boat's cannon installation was slightly different. Some boats had reinforced deck structures. Others had improved sighting systems. A few boats received armor plating around the gunner's position. These individual modifications created a testing laboratory for naval weapons development. Bureau of Ordnance representatives visited Henderson Field in January 1943 to examine the field modifications and incorporate successful improvements into official designs. The contrast with other services was instructive. The Army rejected dozens of field modifications during World War II because they deviated from approved doctrine. Tank crews welded additional armor fey forbidden. Infantry units modified weapons fey prohibited. Engineers improvised bridge designs fey unauthorized. The Navy, particularly in the Pacific, showed greater flexibility. If the modification worked in combat, it often received official approval. The 37mm cannon became the most successful field modified weapon adopted by the Navy during World War II. Other modifications included radar installations, rocket launchers, and radio equipment. But none had the same direct combat impact. None went from salvage components to factory standard equipment as quickly. None proved as consistently effective across multiple theaters. The lesson transcended the specific weapon. Innovation in combat requires commanders willing to take risk, crews willing to experiment, higher headquarters willing to evaluate results over doctrine. The bureaucratic system that approved the 37mm cannon in 18 months was remarkable, not because 18 months was fast, but because the system approved it at all. Modern military innovation follows similar patterns. Special operations forces modify equipment constantly. Combat units adapt weapons to specific environments. The difference between successful and failed innovations often depends on documentation and command support. Lynch documented his results. Calvert supported the modification. Bureau of Ordnance evaluated the data. The system worked. The sailors who improvised the first cannon installation at Henderson Field in October 1942 could not have predicted their modification would become standard equipment. They solved an immediate problem using available materials. The innovation succeeded because the problem was real, the solution was practical, and the results were measurable. PT boats earned their reputation through innovations like the 37mm cannon. The boats themselves were not technologically sophisticated. Wooden hulls, gasoline engines, simple weapons. What made them effective was crew ingenuity, the willingness to adapt, to improvise, to take salvage aircraft parts and make them work on boats. That spirit defined PT boat operations throughout the war. Japanese commanders called PT boats Devil Boats and Green Dragons. The names reflected respect earned in combat. PT boats operating at night, attacking from unexpected directions, destroying supply convoys. The 37mm cannon amplified that effectiveness. The weapon gave PT boats offensive capability that matched their tactical mobility. By February 1943, Squadron 8 deployed to New Guinea with factory-produced cannon mounts. The field modification had become official equipment in 4 months. The New Guinea campaign validated effectiveness in different conditions. Narrower waters, heavier jungle canopy, restricted maneuver space. Squadron 8 destroyed over 60 barges in 3 months. Lieutenant Commander Robert Kelly developed new tactics. His boats operated in 3 boat divisions, with one boat serving as mobile resupply platform. The resupply boat remained 2,000 yards offshore, while others engaged targets. When attacking boats expended ammunition, they rendezvous for fresh magazines. This extended patrol endurance from 4 to 8 hours. PT boats intercepted multiple convoys, per Pascal troll. Japanese supply operations faced systematic destruction. Combat reports from January documented the impact. 30. 7 PT boat patrols engaged Japanese barges. 41 barges destroyed. 19 barges damaged. 8 barges escaped. The 37mm cannon gave PT boats offensive capability they never had with torpedoes alone. More importantly, PT boat losses decreased. September through November 1942, Squadron 3 lost 6 boats. December 1942 through February 1943, with cannons installed, 2 boats lost. Neither loss was attributed to barge engagements. The Bureau of Ordnance authorized development of an improved cannon, specifically for naval use in June 1943. The 37mm M9 featured a longer barrel, higher muzzle velocity, and heavier construction to handle sustained fire. The M9 was designed from the start as a naval weapon, not an aircraft gun adapted for ships. The M9 cannon entered production in August 1943, manufactured by Colt's Patent Firearms Company in Hartford, Connecticut. The weapon weighed 405 pounds, nearly double the weight of the M4. The longer 78-inch barrel produced a muzzle velocity of 3,000 feet per second, 50% faster than the M4. The increased velocity meant flatter trajectory and better armor penetration. The first M9 cannons reached the Pacific in October 1943. Motor torpedo boat Squadron 15 received 24 weapons for installation on their boats. The installation required reinforced deck structures because of the additional weight. Naval architects designed strengthened mounting points with steel plate backing under the plywood deck. The modifications added 200 pounds of structural reinforcement per boat. Testing the M9 revealed immediate advantages. The higher muzzle velocity extended effective range to 1,000 yards. The M4 had been effective to 600 yards. The additional 400 yards of range meant PT boats could engage barges before entering effective range of Japanese return fire. The psychological impact on Japanese forces intensified throughout 1943. Barge crews reported that American PT boats appeared to fire continuously during attacks. The rapid cyclic rate of the automatic cannon created the impression of overwhelming firepower, even when actual ammunition expenditure was modest. Japanese naval intelligence attempted to determine what had changed. They examined wreckage from PT boats sunk in action, but found no obvious modifications to the basic boat design. The engines were the same. The torpedo tubes were the same. The machine guns were the same. What Japanese intelligence didn't recognize was that the key modification was hidden in plain sight. The 37mm cannon looked like original equipment to casual observation. Even when Japanese forces captured intact cannon installations, they didn't understand the significance. Japanese doctrine emphasized large warships with heavy armor and big guns. Small boats with rapid fire weapons didn't fit their tactical thinking. They assumed the cannons were defensive weapons, not realizing that PT boats were using them offensively against supply vessels. The tactical revolution spread to other theaters. PT boat squadrons in the Mediterranean requested 37mm cannons in early 1944. German E-boats and Italian Moss boats used shallow draft hulls that were difficult targets for torpedoes. The Mediterranean squadrons needed the same capability developed in the Pacific. Motor torpedo boat squadrons 22 and 29 received M9 cannons in March 1944. The Mediterranean tactical environment differed significantly from the Pacific. Narrower seas, more concentrated enemy defenses, heavier coastal artillery. But the cannon's fundamental effectiveness remained unchanged. Mediterranean PT boats engaged German convoys off the Italian coast throughout spring and summer 1944. The results paralleled Pacific operations: higher kill rates, lower casualty rates, and increased tactical flexibility. The weapon's success created unexpected supply problems. Colt's production capacity was limited. The company was simultaneously producing .45 caliber pistols, .50 caliber machine guns, and various other weapons for the war effort. Adding 37mm cannon production strained their manufacturing resources. Colt manufactured over 1,500 M9 cannons between August 1943 and August 1945. Not all went to PT boats. Some equipped landing craft, some went to patrol craft, some to coastal defense installations. But PT boats received priority allocation because combat results justified it. By early 1945, Japanese barge traffic in the Philippines had essentially ceased. Not because the Japanese stopped trying to move supplies, but because PT boats destroyed barges faster than the Japanese could replace them. The 37mm cannon created a tactical situation where shallow draft supply vessels could not survive. Japanese forces resorted to submarine supply runs and night flights. More expensive, less efficient, but safer than surface barges. The tactical balance had shifted completely. PT boats now controlled the shallow water approaches to Japanese-held islands. The final major PT boat operation occurred in Borneo. In June 1945, Australian and American forces invaded Brunei Bay. PT boats provided fire support and anti-barge patrols. Japanese resistance was lighter than expected. Few barges to engage. The war was ending. Post-war analysis by the Navy's Bureau of Ships examined PT boat effectiveness across all theaters. The analysis covered 1942 through 1945, 4 years of combat operations, thousands of patrols, hundreds of engagements. The statistics revealed a clear pattern. PT boats equipped with 37mm cannons achieved significantly higher kill rates and lower casualty rates than boats without the weapons. The numbers were definitive. PT boats operating from October 1942 through September 1943 without cannons destroyed an average of 0.3 Japanese vessels per Pascal troll. PT boats operating October 1943 through August 1945 with cannons destroyed an average of 1.8 vessels per Pascal troll, 6 times more effective. American casualties reflected the same pattern. PT boat crew losses in the Solomons campaign from August through September 1942 averaged 4.2 sailors per week. October 1942 through February 1943, after cannon installation, averaged 1.7 sailors per week, a 60% reduction. The cannons allowed PT boats to engage at ranges where Japanese return fire was less effective. The tactical advantage was measurable in both offensive capability and crew survival rates. Lieutenant Robert Lynch survived the war. He commanded PT-48 through the entire Solomons campaign. 15 months of combat operations, 47 patrols, 19 confirmed kills. He received the Navy Cross for actions in November 1942. The citation specifically mentioned the innovation of mounting aircraft cannons on PT boats. Lynch returned to civilian life in Philadelphia, worked as an electrical engineer, died in 1978. He never spoke publicly about the cannon modification. The innovation that changed naval warfare remained a technical footnote in his personal history. Technical Sergeant James Coogan transferred from Henderson Field to Tulagi and spent the remainder of the war maintaining PT boat cannons. He trained over 200 gunners' mates on M4 and M9 maintenance procedures. After the war, Coogan remained in the Air Force, retired as a master sergeant in 1962. He kept detailed maintenance logs from his time at Tulagi. Those logs documented every cannon removed from wrecked aircraft, every modification made, every combat malfunction and repair. The logs survived and reside in the National Archives. Chief Machinist Mate Donald Frey designed the original pedestal mount in Henderson Field's machine shop. His crude design became the basis for factory production mounts manufactured 18 months later. Frey received no recognition for the innovation during the war. No medal, no commendation. He remained at Henderson Field until December 1943, then transferred to Pearl Harbor for submarine maintenance duty. After the war, he returned to Tacoma, Washington, worked at a shipyard, died in 1991 at age 73. The innovation that saved hundreds of American lives and destroyed 800 Japanese vessels began in a machine shop with salvaged parts. No engineering approval, no testing protocol, no authorization. Just practical men solving immediate problems with available materials. Innovation in combat requires commanders willing to take risks, crews willing to experiment, higher headquarters willing to evaluate results over doctrine. The sailors at Henderson Field solved a real problem with practical solutions and measurable results. 800 Japanese vessels destroyed proved the concept.